It was well past midnight when I made the discovery that unraveled my life. Elliot had fallen asleep on the couch, laptop still open on the coffee table. I reached to close it when a flashing notification on the screen caught my eye. Trying to ignore it felt wrong. A nagging voice told me to look. I clicked to view the message and was met with strings of garbled text, like some secret code. Row after row filled the screen, each one more cryptic than the last. My heart raced as I scrolled through them, my mind swirling with questions. What did these encoded messages mean? Who was he communicating with in this manner? A soft snore from Elliot jolted me back to reality. I closed the laptop, my trembling hands a clear sign that I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. Once in our bedroom, I tried to push it out of my mind, but a cold sense of dread had already taken root. Morning came, and Elliot was his usual self, hustling out the door with a rushed goodbye after grabbing a protein bar. I watched him leave, my gaze settling on the laptop still on the table. The urge to unlock its secrets burned within me. I waited until Eliza left for school before retrieving the laptop. My hands shook as I lifted the lid and was prompted for the password. Of course, Elliot always kept his devices secured. I tried our anniversary date, Eliza's birthday, any combination I could think of to no avail. I nearly gave up when suddenly it struck me, the password he used for everything. With one final attempt, the desktop appeared, and there they were, those encoded messages staring back at me, taunting me with their mystery. Hours ticked by as I scoured the internet, desperately seeking some way to decipher the code. A knock at the door jolted me from my obsessive search. It was Lina, my neighbor and closest friend. "Marianne, are you all right? I've been calling, but you weren't answering." I swung open the door, disheveled and frantic. "Lina, I need your help." She stepped inside, eyes wide with concern at my panicked state. I recounted everything, the encrypted messages, my fruitless attempts at uncovering their meaning. Lina listened intently, her brow furrowed. "Show me." I led her to the laptop and opened the damning thread once more. Lina studied the screen in silence before her shoulders slumped, gaze turning to me with a mix of sympathy and dread. "Oh, Marianne, this isn't good." Those words hung heavy in the air between us. In that moment, I knew nothing would be the same. A cold chill of foreboding gripped me as Lina took the laptop, her expression grave. She was a former private investigator. If anyone could unravel this mystery, it was her. "I'll get to the bottom of this. Whatever Elliot is mixed up in, we'll find out." Though her reassurance should have comforted me, all I felt was a sinking certainty that my life was about to be shattered. Staring at the messages that had consumed my every waking thought, I couldn't shake the feeling they held secrets that would forever change everything. As that dreadful night faded into a new day, the gravity of Lina's words sank in. Elliot's world of encrypted messages had cracked open the door to something sinister, perhaps even dangerous. I was now a woman peering into the abyss of her own life, and the truths it promised to unveil filled me with primal fear. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Every time Elliot came home late from work, every hushed phone call, every absent-minded excuse, it all fed the rising doubts in my mind. "Working late again?" I asked one evening as he rushed through the door, still fiddling with his phone. He barely looked up. "Yeah, big client meeting. Didn't realize how late it got." I watched him disappear upstairs to freshen up before dinner. As soon as he was out of sight, I pulled out my own phone and opened the tracking app Lina had installed. Sure enough, the location marker showed he'd spent over 2 hours at an upscale restaurant, not the office. When he finally joined Eliza and me at the table, I could barely hold back my anger. "Everything okay?" he asked through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. "Just fine," I lied, forcing a smile for Eliza's sake. After she went to bed, I cornered Elliot in the living room. "Who was the client you were meeting tonight?" He tensed, eyes darting away from mine. Anderson Analytics. Why? Funny, I could have sworn you said you had a late meeting at the office." A bead of sweat formed on his brow as the accusation hung in the air. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "I don't have time for more lies, Elliot. Your location tracker says you were at Alice Day for over 2 hours. His face drained of color. "You're tracking now?" I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And based on what I've seen, I have a hard time believing any excuse that comes out of your mouth. Elliot slumped onto the couch, a head in his hands. When he finally spoke, it was almost a whisper. Marianne, I'm so sorry. Something snapped inside me then. Save it. I don't want to hear any more lies. I stormed out, Lena's words ringing in my head. Whatever he was hiding, we were going to find out. The next few weeks became a relentless cycle, following Elliot, documenting his every move, cashing in every favor Lena could to uncover the truth. Piecing together his electronic trails with hard evidence from the streets, a sinister pattern emerged. Encrypted emails to a incognito account, dinner receipts for 2 from romantic destinations, hotel charges on his corporate card from out-of-town business trips. It all pointed to one inescapable conclusion: my husband was having an affair. I felt sick every time Lena revealed a new layer of Elliot's betrayal. All those nights I'd waited up for him, the excuses I'd accepted, the intimacy he'd faked, it was all a lie. Lena had even identified the woman, a fresh-faced young associate named Clara from his office. There were photos of them together, laughing over drinks, leaving a hotel arm in arm. With every gut-wrenching revelation, a new ember of fury burned inside me. One night, after putting Eliza to bed, I finally confronted Elliot. I laid out every damning piece of evidence, watching his face turn ashen with horror and shame. This time there was no denying it, no more lies to hide behind. Who is she? I demanded when he fell silent, eyes swirling with panic. Clara, your little office fling? Tears welled up in his eyes, but I felt no pity, only an icy, indignant rage. How could you do this to us, to Eliza? When he finally spoke, it was in a broken rasp. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I laughed bitterly at his pathetic excuse. Save it for someone who cares. Elliot reached for me, eyes pleading. Please, let me explain. Pulling back, I stared at the man I once loved with nothing but disgust and contempt. There's nothing to explain. It's over. Those 3 words hung in the air, caustic and absolute. I turned and left the room, Elliot's muffled sobs following me out. The life I knew was unraveling, and all I felt was an animal hunger for vengeance. The coming days would be a war, but I took comfort in knowing the truth was my greatest weapon. If he thought his lies could hurt me any more than they already had, Elliot had no idea what was coming. I wouldn't just survive his betrayal, I would make him pay. The aftermath of Elliot's confession was a whirlwind. One moment, we were in the midst of a screaming match. The next, he was pleading for forgiveness, groveling at my feet. I barely registered his pathetic apologies over the roaring in my ears. Somehow I found the strength to force him out of the house. You need to go. I can't even look at you right now. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a withering glare. Not another word. Just get out before you traumatize Eliza any more than you already have. His shoulders sagged in defeat as he turned and trudged out, leaving me alone to process the sickening truth. My husband, my supposed partner, had been lying and cheating right under my nose. I sank to the floor, hot tears streaming down my face as the gravity of his betrayal crashed over me in waves. I don't know how long I stayed like that, crumpled and sobbing, but eventually Lena found me. She pulled me into a tight embrace, letting me cry until I was spent. When I could finally speak, the words tumbled out in a torrent. Oh God, Lena, how could he do this to us? To Eliza? My voice broke on my daughter's name, the thought of her precious innocence being shattered by his lies almost too much to bear. She idolizes him. Lena squeezed my hand, her jaw set with determination. He's scum, Marianne. You don't deserve any of this. I hiccuped back a sob, reality crashing over me again. But how could I have been so blind? Were all those late nights and business trips just with her? Sympathy flickered in Lena's eyes. Probably, but it doesn't matter now. The important thing is you know the truth. She was right. The truth, as ugly as it was all that mattered now. I had to stay strong, not just for myself, but for Eliza. No more crying, no more wallowing. It was time to take action. Over the next few days, Lena helped me gather all the evidence of Elliot's infidelity, incriminating photos, emails, travel records. The sheer volume of proof, coupled with his own confession, left no doubt. I'd be lying if I said the prospect of divorce didn't terrify me, but with Lena by my side, I felt a perverse sense of power. This philandering snake of a man wouldn't know what hit him. Speaking of the snake himself, I made it clear he wasn't welcome back home until he figured out living arrangements. The house may have been under both our names, but after such a gross violation of trust and vows, I sure as hell wasn't going to let him slither back in. To his credit, Elliot didn't put up much resistance. He retreated to some corporate apartment like the coward he was, tail tucked between his legs. Good. Let him wallow in the mess he created while Lena and I put our plan into motion. We need to hit him where it hurts. His reputation and his pocketbook, Lena advised one afternoon over coffee. No jury is going to side with an adulterous, lying scumbag like him, not with the evidence we have. I nodded in grim agreement. He's not taking Eliza from me without a fight. She's my whole world. Lena reached across the table, grasping my hand firmly. We won't let that bastard take anything from you two, I promise. He wants to burn everything down with his lies. We'll make sure all that's left is ashes. Her words resonated deep within me, fanning the flames of vengeful determination. For too long, Elliot had walked all over me, treating our vows and family like they meant nothing. But not anymore. I may have been an unsuspecting victim before, but I'd be damned if I let myself stay one for long. This was war, and it was time to stop playing by his rules. If he wanted to fight for the life he betrayed me and Eliza over, so be it. Because this time, I had no intention of going easy, and no mercy to give. As I looked at the growing file of evidence against him, I allowed a cold, resolute smile to spread across my face. It was time for Elliot to learn the hard way that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned and a mother protecting her child. Let the battle begin. With Lena's guidance, I wasted no time preparing for the fight of my life. First order of business, hiring a bulldog divorce lawyer. Meet Jackie Russo, Lena said as she ushered in a petite but imposing woman in a sleek pantsuit. Best in the business at taking cheating scumbags to the cleaners. Jackie wasted no time laying out our strategy. We go for the jugular, full custody of your daughter, and a massive share of assets. Infidelity puts us in a prime position, especially since it seems your husband was using corporate funds and resources to facilitate his affairs. She rifled through the mountain of evidence, nodding approvingly. This is all rock-solid stuff. He won't be able to talk his way out of it. A small, grim smile played across my lips. Good. I want that lying snake to suffer. Jackie matched my hardened expression. Don't worry, he'll get exactly what he deserves. Before she left, she issued strict instructions. Document every communication with Elliot, install updated monitoring software on all devices, and begin compiling financial records in preparation for court proceedings. Lena helped me follow Jackie's directives to the letter. Every email, text, or call from Elliot got meticulously logged. New tracking apps recorded his every move in real time. I even had a little camera installed to capture any underhanded confrontations should he dare to approach me or Eliza. While executing this thorough surveillance web, I stumbled across a series of shady transactions buried in our joint investment accounts, large sums being funneled into separate, private holdings under Elliot's name alone. That bastard's trying to hide assets. I seethed when I reported the findings to Lena. Her face darkened with rage. Over my dead body. This just got nuclear. Working through contacts and backdoor channels, Lena dug deeper and uncovered even more damning evidence of Elliot's financial treachery. Not only was he actively working to divert marital assets, he'd been leveraging his startup's capital in illegal offshore tax havens. My cheating, lying snake of a husband was nothing more than a thieving con artist. Armed with this new bombshell evidence, Jackie was practically giddy. This is a game changer. He's not just a faithless prick. He's a crook hell-bent on robbing you and your daughter blind. She leaned back with a satisfied smirk. Trust me, the court's going to crucify his ass. Part of me felt sick at the depths of deceit Elliot had stooped to, but that just made me all the more determined to decimate him. If he thought he could leave me and Eliza with nothing while living the high life off his ill-gotten riches, he had another thing coming. In the calm before the legal storm, I knew I needed to prepare Eliza as best I could. I dreaded shattering her world, but she had to know the truth about her father's reprehensible actions. "Mommy, is Daddy not coming home again?" she asked one night as we cuddled on the couch. I took a deep breath, wrapping her tight in my arms. "No, baby, I'm afraid things are going to be very different from now on." her brow furrowed in confusion. But why? Did he do something bad? Steeling myself, I resolved to protect her innocence for just a while longer. Yes, sweetie, Daddy made some very bad choices that hurt our family, but I promise you everything will be okay. Mommy's here and I'll always keep you safe. She nodded solemnly, her bright eyes shining with trust. In that moment, my mission crystallized. To give my sweet girl the stable, loving home she deserved, one free of her father's cancerous lies and greed. If Elliot thought I'd go easy for Eliza's sake, he gravely underestimated the fury of a mother's protective instincts. No more Mrs. Nice Girl, not after the depths of his deception. I was going to war, and God help anyone foolish enough to stand in my way. I had Lena and the full force of the law behind me, but more importantly, I had the truth. That was a power Elliot's lies and dirty money could never overcome. The months ahead would be an all-out battle, but I took solace knowing I held the trump card. After having my life blown apart, it was only fair I returned the favor. An eye for an eye, time to make Elliot pay. The day had finally arrived, the moment of reckoning I'd been both dreading and eagerly anticipating. With Lena and Jackie by my side, I was as prepared as I could be to face Elliot and his reign of deception head-on. We coordinated our strike with surgical precision. First, Jackie fired off a blistering letter to Elliot's lawyer, laying out the laundry list of his transgressions in brutal legalese. Infidelity, fraud, mishandling of corporate assets. We even included copies of the most damning evidence for good measure. While he no doubt scrambled to form a feeble defense, Lena sprang the next phase of our attack. Through her underworld contacts, she orchestrated an anonymous leak of the sleaziest photos and emails to a pair of smarmy gossip bloggers. Elliot's sordid double life would soon be broadcast for all to see. With his reputation already going up in flames, it was time to detonate the biggest bombshell. Following Jackie's instructions to the letter, I requested we refrain from mudslinging and meet in person to discuss a peaceful resolution. The conniving bastard fell for it hook, line, and sinker. When Elliot arrived at the upscale cafe Lena had meticulously prepped, his expression went from relieved to horrified the second he saw his mistress Clara seated across from me. "What is this?" he sputtered, eyes bulging like a cornered rat. I rose from my seat, hands trembling ever so slightly with the thrill of vengeance finally being within reach. "This is your reckoning, Elliot. Time to face the crimes you committed against me. Against our family." Clara's face was a mask of hurt and bewilderment as the truth crashed over her. You told me you were divorced." Elliot swiveled towards her, mouth agape as he groped for an excuse. But the jig was officially up. His tangled web of lies was slowly unraveling before our very eyes. "So what's it going to be?" I asked, my voice rising with barely contained fury. "More lies? More empty apologies and hollow promises?" Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Lena giving a subtle nod from her vantage point. The cameras were rolling, every moment being recorded for the courts and whatever audience enacted justice. When Elliot remained silent, shoulders slumped in defeat, I pressed on with the final kill shot. "We have everything, pictures, videos, emails, travel records, all of it proving your affairs, both the personal ones with Clara and your professional misconduct in pillaging your company's coffers." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as the weight of her unwitting role came crashing down. "You used me? You're married with a family?" A muscle twitched in Elliot's jaw, and for a split second I could have sworn I saw the shadow of the man I once loved peek through the veil of lies and weakness. But it was too little, too late. He'd torched those bridges himself. "Yes, I'm still very much married," I interjected, not about to let him try and sweet-talk his way out of this apocalypse of his own making. "Which makes what you two," I gestured between them with undisguised revulsion, "engaged in nothing short of adultery. Illegal, unethical, and unforgivable, especially with the shady financial games you were pulling behind the scenes." Clara gasped, hand flying to her mouth in shock. "Oh my God, you're a monster." Elliot opened his mouth to retort, a familiar look of arrogant defiance flickering in his eyes. But one withering glare from me quickly snuffed it out as I delivered the final, scathing blow. "Save whatever pitiful excuses you were going to spew. The only thing that matters now is that the truth is laid bare. And once our day in court arrives, your lies and betrayal will be on display for all to see. Get ready for a legal battle like you wouldn't believe." His jaw clenched, resolve visibly crumbling. For all his bluster and success, Elliot knew the crushing weight of evidence left him powerless. This was a war he'd already lost before it even began. My lip curled in a cold sneer. "That's what you get for being a lying, cheating scumbag who thought he could destroy my life without consequence. Consider this the end of your charmed existence as you know it." With that final salvo, I turned on my heel and strode away, Lena falling in step beside me. A mixture of elation and loathing swirled through me, propelling me forward into the coming maelstrom of legal proceedings. But one look at Lena's grim smile, and I knew we had already seized the upper hand. With truth as our blade, Elliot's deceitful world would come crumbling down, and I would be the one wielding justice. In the aftermath of that fateful confrontation, all hell broke loose for Elliot. Just like Lena promised, those sleazy gossip bloggers went to town with the salacious details we leaked, gleefully ripping Elliot's carefully curated public image to shreds. Within hours, the scandal was rocketing across the internet, his face and name plastered beside damning headlines. Tech CEO's seedy double life exposed. Married startup mogul caught in torrid office affair. Founder suspected of pillaging company assets for mistress. I'll admit, there was a perverse thrill in watching Elliot's world crumble in such dramatic fashion. One by one, clients and business partners began severing ties, the stench of infidelity and fraud too toxic to be associated with. His board moved to strip him of leadership roles as outraged investors began pulling funding left and right. "My God, this is spiraling out of control," he ranted during one of his increasingly frantic phone calls demanding we make it all stop. I just laughed bitterly in response. "What, you thought there wouldn't be consequences for your actions? For destroying my life and Eliza's with your sickening lies and betrayal?" The stunned silence on the other end was incredibly satisfying. For once, the self-righteous prick was utterly speechless. "This is just the beginning, you pathetic bastard," I snarled, feeling emboldened by the burning wreckage of his disgraced reputation. "We're just getting started dismantling every last remnant of the phony life you constructed on deception." When he tried to sputter out another feeble defense, I shut him down with vehement finality. "Save your breath and your lies. The court's going to hear all about your despicable betrayals soon enough. You're going to pay for breaking my family apart and squandering our lives with your greed and indiscretions." With that, I hung up, breathing heavily as a strange sense of power surged through me. This was what I'd been waiting for. The sweet release of karma raining its brutal judgment upon the man who thought his lies could go unpunished. But the relentless onslaught was only just beginning. No stone would be left unturned, no secret left unexposed. Lena's underworld informants continued churning up repugnant new details about Elliot's lurid misbehavior. More mistresses, dodgier business dealings, a trail of lives ruined by his insatiable avarice. Each bombshell revelation was like a mallet strike to his dwindling reputation, chipping away at the glossy facade until all that remained was the grimy truth. Elliot wasn't just a cheater and a liar, but a narcissistic con man who couldn't be trusted as far as he could be thrown. And I ensured Eliza remained sheltered from the grisly depths her father had sunk. She was hurting enough as it was from his abandonment and the looming threat of family being torn apart. The specifics could wait until she was older and could comprehend the scope of his perfidy. My brave little girl's spirit was battered but not broken, a fact that induced heaping mounds of guilt and shame in her father each time he tried to see her and salvage whatever tattered scraps might remain of his imprint on her life. Frankly, I relished watching him squirm, reduced to a blubbering, feckless mess by his own atrocious actions. "Shh! She won't even look at me!" He howled one afternoon in a rare moment of apparent self-awareness. Can you blame her? I scoffed, resisting the urge to spit in his face. You're the one who chose prioritizing that vapid little tramp over your own daughter, you lecherous piece of filth. Now you'll get to enjoy the rewards of recklessly shattering her rose-tinted view of her perfect daddy. His body deflated like a sad balloon. Please. I'm begging you, Marianne. We can still fix this. Put this behind us. Any lingering pity I might have felt evaporated in that moment. With a look of pure disgust, I grabbed him by the collar, surprising myself with the electric strength coursing through my veins. "No more groveling, you absolute coward. I'm done listening to your sniveling pleas and pathetic rationalization," I growled, our faces just inches apart as I held him in place. "It's far too late for that, so go on, keep debasing yourself on your hands and knees, though I guarantee no jury or judge will find it as amusing as I do when it's time to gut you for everything you're worth." Just when I thought Elliot's downward spiral couldn't get any more spectacular, his own mistress Clara delivered a crucial blow that left the deceitful bastard utterly crippled. It started with a rambling, sniveling voicemail he left one night, drunkenly pleading for me to make the media firestorm stop raging. As if I even could have at that point, the truth was wildfire, consuming everything in its path. "Please, you have to make them stop," he slurred, voice thick with self-pity and liquor. "I've lost nearly everything. The investors, the clients, even the damn cleaning staff won't look me in the eye anymore. It's all crashing down around me because of your stupid vendetta." I actually laughed out loud at the pathetic display. "My vendetta, you arrogant prick? Don't you dare try to play the victim card with me after willfully destroying our lives with your repugnant lies and cheating." A heavy pause, then a bitter scoff. "So what, you'll never be satisfied until I'm living on the streets? Is that what you want, to leave me with nothing, just like your little assistant dug up all those financial discrepancies?" "Don't you put that on Lena," I snarled, hackles raised. "She's got more integrity in her pinky finger than you've exhibited in your entire wasted life as a lying, conniving scumbag." Another pause, then a sigh that instantly put me on edge. "You're right, I've been unfair. To you, to Lena, to everyone." The whimpering grew more pronounced, interspersed with drunken sniffles. "I never wanted any of this, baby, Clara. It just sort of happened, and then I panicked and lied to try and protect you and Eliza. But I see now that was unforgivable, ripping apart everything we had." My blood boiled at his grotesque attempt to rewrite the narrative as some tragic mistake. "Don't you dare try to sanitize your actions, not after everything. Those weren't one-off lies, Elliot. It was a systematic, years-long betrayal of me and our entire family." You're right, he mumbled, the drunken words starting to slur together. I'm a terrible husband, a terrible father, a terrible, awful person who deserves all this pain." I could hardly believe the blubbering coming through the phone. This sniveling, self-loathing wretch was the same man who once commanded such ego and arrogance, soberly lying through his teeth while living this sordid, double life. "That's enough, Elliot. I'm hanging up now," I said, voice eerily calm. "But let me leave you with this. I'm not the one who brought this misery crashing down on you. That was your own undoing, wrought by your infinite capacity for greed, deceit, and selfishness." A hiccuping sob was his only feeble reply. "Please, Marianne, tell me there's a way to make this right." I shook my head in disgust, unmoved by the drunken theatrics. "The only way to make this right now is to accept the consequences of your actions like a man and give me the divorce I'm entitled to. I'll fight until my last breath to ensure you don't wriggle out of facing justice for how you violated me and Eliza." With that vow lancing through his self-pity, I abruptly hung up and tossed the phone aside, resolute in my conviction. But the fun was only just beginning. A few days later, Lena came barreling into the house with a huge grin and a surprise. Clara was outside, and she was pissed. "That little hussy wants to return the favor and take the lying snake down," Lena announced with a cackle. I couldn't believe my ears, but sure enough, there was Elliot's former mistress fuming on my front step, fists clenched and eyes ablaze. "That miserable two-timing creep used me," she spat as soon as I opened the door. I had no clue he had a wife and child the entire time he was courting me with his lies and fake promises. A devilish smirk crept across my lips. "Oh, do go on." The tears of fury and shame came pouring out then in a torrent. "It's all true. The encrypted messages, the secret trips, telling me he was getting divorced. He played me for a complete and utter fool, all for his selfish, sick thrills." I glanced at Lena, hardly daring to hope. "I don't suppose you have proof to back this up?" Clara's eyes narrowed to slits. Does pages of dirty texts and emails detailing all the depraved acts he begged for behind his family's back count? My jaw dropped as she fished out a thick manila folder crammed with indisputable evidence, thrusting it into my hands. Please, take it all and bury that lying monster. He doesn't deserve a damn thing after how he used and manipulated us. My head was spinning, mind racing at the implications of this shocking twist. Not only was Clara corroborating our entire case against Elliot, but she'd provided us a whole new treasure trove of weapons to completely obliterate him. Lena clapped me on the shoulder, eyes dancing with vindicated glee. Like I said, Karma's a stone-cold bitch. This is the final nail in coffin we've been building for that pathetic snake. As I rifled through X-rated message after message, lurid photo after lurid photo, I felt a sense of vicious satisfaction knowing Elliot was well and truly trapped in his own deceit. Every sordid new revelation just compounded the heaping mountain of evidence stacking up against him. My lips curled into a smile, utterly devoid of warmth or mercy. With this latest bombshell, there would be no more running, no more desperate rationalizations or drunken pity bargaining. After willfully charting this path of destruction through deception and cheating, Elliot was finally going to reap what he deserved. I was going to bury his repugnant lies once and for all, and relish every second as the full force of judgment rained down upon him. The disgraced charlatan had sealed his own fate long ago. Now it was just a matter of twisting the knife deeper and giving him a brutally well-earned ass-kicking, both in court and in the unforgiving crucible of public shame. The reckoning was nigh, and there would be no mercy to be found. The day had finally arrived. Divorce court. Months of arduous legal battles, mountains of damning evidence, and the unrelenting media circus had all led to this pivotal moment of long-awaited reckoning. Elliot at least had the sense to look appropriately haggard and miserable as we faced off before the stern-eyed judge. His expensive suit hung loosely from his slumped frame, dark circles painting the story of sleepless nights brought on by guilt or self-pity. I couldn't say for sure. Part of me almost felt a flicker of pity at seeing him so diminished and broken. Almost. But then my gaze fell upon the cold, impassive faces of Jackie and Lena beside me, their jaws set in grim determination. This fight was far from over. No matter how pathetic a shell Elliot had been reduced to, we couldn't afford even an iota of complacency. Not after everything he'd put me and Eliza through with his reprehensible betrayal. The judge called the proceedings to order, and like a shot, Jackie was out of her chair, prowling before the bench with the intensity of a caged jungle cat. Your Honor, the case before you today concerns a tale of infidelity, greed, and deception so utterly repugnant that it would turn even the most jaded of stomachs, she began, leveling an accusatory finger at the diminished figure across the aisle. This man, this charlatan, perpetrated not just one despicable betrayal, but an endless cavalcade of lies and indiscretions against his own family that let him indulge his most selfish, depraved whims. Elliot's eyes remained glued to the floor, his expression unreadable. Whether he felt shame, defiance, or simply resigned numbness was anyone's guess. We will prove through a comprehensive body of evidence that the defendant, Elliot Rhodes, conducted multiple extramarital affairs over the course of years using company assets and resources. Jackie pressed, pacing with fervor as she built her damning case point by point. Not only did he brazenly cuckold my client through these salacious acts, but he perpetrated a staggering breach of ethics and fiduciary duty by misappropriating funds to facilitate his degenerate behavior, all while lying to her and their daughters' faces, utterly disregarding their dignity and humanity in service of his perverse, narcissistic desires. My fists clenched beneath the table as the memories came flooding back. The constant gaslighting and dismissive lies culminating in that devastating night I stumbled upon the encrypted messages that first hinted at Elliot's double life. All for what? So he could sate his lust with some younger vapid tramp without any care for how it poisoned and destabilized everything our family was supposed to stand for? Jackie was relentless, savagely battering Elliot with exhibit after exhibit that methodically deconstructed his crumbling facade of virtue, incriminating photos, travel logs, bank statements, and receipts for illicit rendezvous. Then came the kill shot. the bombshell file of lurid messages and confessions from Clara herself, detailing in granular, humiliating detail the depths to which Elliot had begged and manipulated to keep up his double life. I couldn't even look at him as the torrent of defiling digital artifacts rained down. The man I had loved and trusted, the father I thought I knew. It was all an utterly pathetic mirage, sacrificed to fuel his basest, most selfish appetites, without a shred of conscience. By the time Jackie mercifully concluded her evisceration, a pall of revulsion and anger seemed to hang over the entire courtroom. Even members of Elliot's own legal team looked repulsed, caught off guard by the sheer magnitude of the evidence against their client's depravity. After a brief recess, the judge returned and leveled her austere gaze squarely on Elliot as the inescapable judgment was read aloud. Full legal and physical custody of the minor child to the plaintiff, with only supervised visitation granted. I heaved an enormous sigh of relief, squeezing Eliza's hand as the tears welled in both our eyes. 80% of all assets and holdings to be transferred to the plaintiff as punitive compensation for the defendant's egregious and reprehensible violations of marital trust and agency. Jackie smirked, leaning in to murmur, "Scorched earth, just like we discussed." When Elliot showed no reaction beyond slightly hanging his head lower, the finality rang out. This court hereby orders the immediate dissolution of the Rhodes marriage, effective immediately with all terms outlined. Case closed. The sound of the gavel was like a gunshot severing the last lingering ties to that wretched life. A profound silence hung in the air for several never-ending beats. Then my entire world exploded in riotous cheers and applause. Lena swept me and Eliza into a nearly suffocating bear hug, hollering in wordless exultation as Jackie exchanged raucous high-fives with her legal team. All around, stunned onlookers seemed to join in the revelry, shouting out congratulations and hurling insults at the disgraced Elliot, who simply withered in place. As the chaos swirled around me, I pulled back from the embrace just long enough to look my brave little girl in the eye. "It's over, sweetie. That man can never, ever hurt us again." She nodded solemnly. For now, she may have only grasped the broadest strokes of her father's sins. But one day, I vowed, she would understand the courage and strength it took to stand up and say no more. To let the truth shine through and dismantle all the darkness wrought by his lies and treachery. No more living in fear or denial or compromise. Just the brilliant light of justice and a love for each other that no deception could ever hope to extinguish. Together we were moving forward to rebuild our lives, unburdened of that parasitic poison. And for that reason alone, the future had never shone brighter or blazed with more possibility. This was my new day, a fresh, clean start. An act of defiance and affirmation after enduring the very worst betrayal life could offer. Not just surviving, but thriving in the aftermath, rebuilt and reborn as an even stronger woman and mother in the process. So as the cheers and celebration reached a fever pitch around us, I defiantly locked eyes with Elliot one last time. He seemed smaller now, inconsequential, just a shriveled husk bereft of the confidence and charisma that had blinded me to his repugnance before. I simply shook my head and mouthed one final message before turning my back on him forever. Good riddance.